Hey guys! Today we'll be covering a manhwa called The Adopted Daughter-in-Law Wants to Leave. If you enjoy the video, please remember to like and subscribe so we can bring you more recap content. Our story starts in an empire where there are two very different, very powerful families. One is the family of Duke Schutz, who are known for their battle prowess. The other is the family of Duke Kleider, a family known for their economic wealth and trade connections. I know what you're thinking. They must be sworn enemies, right? Actually, wrong. Historically, the two families have always been close, but something happened in the last decade to bring them even closer together. Exactly 10 years ago, a horrible accident befell the Duke and Duchess Kleider when their carriage fell off a cliff. When Duke Schutz heard about his dear friend's passing, he ran to the scene to find their bodies, but no sign of their child. No matter how hard he searched, the lost child could not be found. Eventually, 10 years later, the Duke did find him, Damian, the heir to the Kleider dukedom. And this is where our story begins, with the girl who reunited these two famous families. If you hadn't guessed it already, this girl is actually from our world and was reincarnated in the plot of one of her favorite storybooks. Hoping to get the original plot back on track, she brought Duke Schutz to Damian. According to the story, this boy will join his adopted father in war 4 years later and meet the female lead, Ashabel. Then they'll live happily ever after. But things take a sudden turn from the plot when the Duke announces that not only will he adopt Damian, but the girl too. She was not expecting that. At this time, the Empire has been successful in several conflicts, so money is no issue. Nobles are eager to spend their money and demonstrate their wealth and generosity, so many have been adopting from orphanages to improve their reputations. Of course, that doesn't mean they actually care about the kids. Even the lady running the orphanage only takes children with good looks so that she can sell them off to the next noble who comes knocking. How messed up is that? That's how our protagonist got adopted. She caught the director's eye with her lovely golden hair and pretty features. What she didn't realize was that this girl was the child of the most famous thief in the Empire, before she was hung for her crimes. As you can imagine, her life has been pretty hard for the last few years. She didn't even realize that she was from another world until one day when she bumped her head in a carriage incident. That's when she realized that this was the inside of a novel and remembered a few hazy things from her past life. She can't remember much, but she knows the plot of this book inside and out, which is pretty convenient since it basically means she's super smart and can see the future. That's why when a kid named Damian walked into the orphanage, she knew he was special. Enter our male lead, Damian Kleider, handsome protagonist of this tale who is destined to be powerful, rich, and marry his true love. Meanwhile, our girl, whose name is Ellie, is actually the main villain of this story and even bullied Damian as a child. Uh-oh. Of all the characters to be reborn as, the villain is not who I would be picking. Although Ellie's upbringing was difficult, Damian's childhood was no walk in the park either. His father, Duke Kleider, was the owner of the Empire's largest trade union, and his family was said to be even more influential than the royal family. Because of their immense fortune and power, the Emperor decided to secretly dispose of them. That's how their carriage ended up falling off a cliff. Which, now that you mention it, that was pretty sus. Like, how does a carriage just accidentally fall off a cliff? At the time of his death, Duke Kleider's will dictated that his entire fortune should be left to his best friend, Duke Erhard Schutz. Opposite of his bestie, Duke Schutz and Kleider were like night and day. Schutz was a menace on the battlefield, and the ruler of the barren northern region, which has always been plagued with beasts. Duke Schutz received a lot of unwanted attention at the time of the accident, since all of the family fortune fell to him. But he didn't want a penny of it. He just wanted to find their lost son and bring him back where he belonged. And it's a good thing he never gave up. From the moment Damian stepped into the orphanage, it was clear that he had a life of hardship. He was much smaller than the other kids, so he immediately started getting picked on. Particularly by one kid named Carson, the oldest boy in the orphanage, who tried to teach him a lesson. In the original novel, Ellie actually helps the bullies, ends up getting kicked out of the orphanage, and dies alone in the streets. Yeesh, that's a little harsh even for a villain. This time around, she's determined to survive. So when Carson invites her to join, she refuses. She doesn't exactly stop them teasing little Damian, but she hopes that as long as she doesn't get involved, she can avoid a lonely death. Besides, he's the main character. He'll survive somehow. At least, that's what she tells herself. But in the end, Ellie's conscience gets the best of her and she decides to step in. When she finds Carson and the others, they've already given Damian quite the beating. She lies and says the director is looking for Carson, forcing the kids to let him go for the time being. She tries to help Damian with his wounds, even offering him medicine that she stole from the director's office. But after years of hardship, Damian has learned there's no point trying to resist. He plans to take as many beatings as necessary until the boys get bored and give up. Jeez, that's dark. How old is this kid again? He doesn't see much point in healing his wounds when he'll just get more tomorrow. But Ellie gives him the medicine anyway and gets back to the hall in time for dinner. Damian is a no-show, so she skips out on her cleaning duties in the kitchen to bring him some bread. To her surprise, he's not in his bedroom either. Carson catches her outside the room. Okay, why is he always following her? Does he have a crush on Ellie or something? She makes up an excuse about looking for one of her friends, and Carson reveals that before he came to the orphanage, Damian was a slave who was forced to hunt monsters. Seriously, how much more tragic can his backstory get? Ellie decides to get on Carson's nerves by lying that Damian is in the warehouse with the teachers, getting special care because he's pretty. The truth is that he's been picked out as the director's private slave, but they don't know that. She convinces the bullies to go look for him in the warehouse, and even gives Carson her bread from dinner. Later that evening, Carson and the bullies get caught trying to sneak into the warehouse, accused of stealing food because of the bread she gave them. Damn, this girl is one smart cookie! Meanwhile, she's wandering through the woods in the dark looking for Damian. In the original novel, once Damian gets to Duke Schutz's castle, he mentions something about relying on swords in order to survive in the dark. It seemed like a metaphor in the book, but Ellie takes it literally and searches for the new kid in the deepest part of the forest. And what do you know? She actually finds him. He intended to sleep outside to avoid Carson, but now that Ellie has taken care of that little menace, he can come back to the dorm and have a good night's sleep. At first, Damian doesn't want to. All those years surviving on his own have made him very wary of others. But for some reason, he decides to trust Ellie and follows her back to the orphanage. Neither of them have had dinner, so she takes him to the teacher's quarters for a bath and some food. He was sitting out in the snow. If he doesn't get warmed up soon, the poor boy could get seriously ill. Damian hesitates. He doesn't want Ellie to see his body and even calls himself disgusting. How sad is that? I guess he must have picked up a lot of injuries in his time as a slave. Ellie tells him sternly never to call himself disgusting and says there's no reason to be ashamed. There's also not much time. The director and the teachers are at the casino, but they could come back at any moment. So she hurries him into the bathroom, promising to find him some clothes and leave them by the door for when he's finished. The clothes are a little big, but because he's so tiny, they kind of look adorable on him. While he was having the most relaxing bath of his life, Ellie ran to the pantry to steal them some sandwiches. She's like a big older sister. Damian has never seen a sandwich before, which is pretty concerning. How badly was he being fed when he was a slave? Ellie teaches him how to eat it, which he does in the most adorable way possible while she helps him dry his hair. He bends down a little to help her, and Ellie catches sight of some kind of scar. It looks like a monster bite. Damian sees her looking at it and explains that he grew his hair long to cover it. She asks if the long hair is annoying him and shifts his hair to the side, exposing his handsome face. Honestly, I don't see what's got Ellie so flustered. He looks more like a baby than a handsome boy to me. But he is the protagonist. Someday he's going to grow up, and those baby blues will knock Ellie to the ground. Once she's recovered from his incredible charms, Ellie notices that his cheeks are a bit pink. She's worried he has a fever, which wouldn't be surprising given his questionable choice to sit outside in the middle of winter. But Damian says he's just flushed from the bath, so Ellie takes him back to the dormitories. Though she doesn't bring him to the bullies' room, she brings him to her room where only Ellie and her friends Betty and Tommy sleep. She gives him the bed beside hers, but announces that they should sleep together for the first night. She really doesn't miss an opportunity, does she? But since he's younger than her and still recovering from his injuries, it's a good idea for Ellie to keep an eye on him at night. Plus, it doesn't seem like he's ever slept in a bed before. Someone's gotta show him how it's done. That night, Ellie falls asleep quickly while little Damian lies awake, thinking over the day and how much kindness he's received. He wasn't expecting anyone to treat a former slave like him so well, especially someone as pretty as Ellie. Seems like her little crush isn't one-sided after all. When Damian eventually falls asleep, he is plagued by nightmares of his past. He remembers fighting a terrifying beast while his mistress watched. Apparently, she used him for her entertainment, making him face all kinds of monsters and never caring if he lived or died. That was when he learned a valuable lesson, that he could not rely on anyone other than himself. If he didn't kill those monsters, they would kill him instead. So he had no choice but to adapt and survive. What an awful life for a child! Damian wakes suddenly from his nightmares to find Ellie watching over him, looking worried. She checks his temperature, but he seems fine, other than the clammy skin and fearful look in his eyes. For a moment, Damian is stunned. He's never had someone worry about him before, not to mention take care of him. So when Ellie goes to find him a towel, he grabs her, not wanting her to go. He reassures Ellie that he's not in any pain, although it doesn't seem like that's the case. Is it just me, or does anyone else get the sense that this kid is hiding something? Before we can find out, the door slams open and Carson appears. Ugh, not this guy again. I think we all knew he'd be back for revenge. He asks Ellie if she got him in trouble on purpose, yelling at her and blaming her for getting him in trouble. I think it's pretty obvious what happened, but clearly this bully can't use his head. Ellie basically tells him the same thing, saying it's his fault for trusting her in the first place. The bell is ringing outside, but Carson ignores it and lunges at her, furious. Just on time, one of the teachers storms in, catching him red-handed. He tries to defend himself, saying Ellie started it by calling him stupid. He asks Tommy and Betty to back him up, which goes about as well as you'd expect. The teacher, of course, doesn't believe him and pulls him away from Ellie at once. As soon as the teacher gives her a chance to tell her side, Ellie spins another story about the teachers going to the casino at night and leaving the children all alone. She plays the innocent angel perfectly, and in the end, Carson looks even worse and their teacher is on the back foot. The final blow comes when Ellie mentions that the warehouse door was open last night, which is curious since she was the last one to lock up before the keys went missing. Obviously, she knows that it was actually the teacher who stole the keys and went inside, but she acts like it's her fault and even turns on the waterworks. Someone give this girl an Oscar already! There's no way the teacher could blame her after that, since she doesn't want to raise unnecessary questions and get in trouble herself. So the teacher drags Carson away, determined to pin all the blame on him, even though he insists Ellie made the whole thing up. As soon as the teacher is gone, Ellie's crocodile tears disappear. She switches back to cheerful old Ellie as if nothing ever happened, and tells the other kids to wash up and get ready for the day. She's kinda scary, huh? Maybe that's why Damian is too shocked to form a sentence after they left. He can't understand why she did all that to protect him. But Ellie just explains that it's the job of adults to look after children. Since the adults in the orphanage aren't doing that, they have to look out for one another instead. So in future, she tells him to lean on her more often, promising he'll be happier if he does. Aww, what kind words from our mini Miss Psychopath! Tommy bursts into the room and tells the kids to hurry up before the director catches them. Ellie drags Damian, who looks like his heart is about to explode. Meanwhile, Carson is stewing in his rage, locked up alone in the attic room as punishment. He can't understand why Ellie is being so nice to the new kid. But what he feels even more than hatred is jealousy. See? I told you he had a crush on Ellie. He's just mad that she's not paying him enough attention. You'd think he would have gotten the hint by now. Damian and Ellie end up working the same shift in the kitchens, but they don't talk much. Damian seems a little caught off guard because of what happened, and Ellie starts to wonder if he blames her for lying to everyone. He insists that's not the case, and his adoptive big sister goes on to explain that the best way to survive is by being strong and getting revenge. Not giving in like he used to do before. This is the first time anyone has encouraged him to stand up for himself, so Damian is a little flustered. When is he not? But he swears to take her advice and face his enemies head-on from now on. And since there are people protecting him, he swears to protect them too. That's the spirit! There's the protagonist energy we were looking for! While they're working in the kitchens, the director stumbles in looking to cure her hangover. She drank too much in the casino last night. Apparently, she does that a lot, since that's actually how Damian ended up in the orphanage. The director was playing cards with his owner when she lost a bet, which left Damian behind as collateral until she could repay her debt. Wait, does that mean he wasn't actually abandoned? Will his owner come back looking for him at some point? The director's memories are interrupted when Carson once again arrives at the scene, causing a fuss as usual. He's determined to prove his innocence, but the director is far too hungover to deal with him right now. She tells the teacher to take care of him, but he makes one last-ditch attempt to secure his freedom by throwing the blame back to Damian. Ellie stands up for him, as always, and reminds the teachers that Carson is well known for bullying other kids. They shouldn't trust a word he says. The director seems to believe her, or at least she treats Ellie differently. She actually managed to get adopted 3 times, until her foster parents found out about her mother and sent her straight back. Maybe she just feels bad for Ellie, but in the end, she leaves the teacher to handle the issue and orders Damian to be moved somewhere else for his protection. The kids just think he's being taken to be punished like Carson, but he ends up chilling in the dining room waiting for lunch to start. Ellie finds him sitting in the corner feeling sorry for himself and invites him over to have lunch with her. Though it turns out she's a popular lunch buddy. Tommy wants the spot to her right, which is kind of ironic since he's actually one of Carson's friends. Clearly, he knows a winning team when he sees one. They're about to eat when Betty starts crying because her doll got covered in soup. Oh, right! With Damian being so serious and tragic, I forgot these guys were just kids. Ellie, who is basically their mother at this point, takes Betty out of the hall to wash her doll and dry her tears, leaving Damian sitting on his own. Tommy tries to get closer to him, but it looks like Damian is still wary of strangers. And it only gets worse when Tommy says he's a close friend of Ellie's. Now Damian sees him as his competition, and I don't think they'll ever be friends. When Ellie comes back, the atmosphere is a little awkward. It seems like Tommy underestimated this kid. He's not kind and shy. He's a wolf in sheep's clothing. That evening, Damian comes out of the shower all warm and drowsy. His cheeks look so soft and fluffy that Ellie finds him even more adorable than usual. I think our girl has a bit of an obsession with this kid. She even goes so far as to dry off his cheeks, admiring his pretty little face. I mean, look at him. It's so obvious he's the male lead. Ellie helps him get ready for bed. At least, this time they'll sleep in separate beds. Damian seems a little scared by the idea, but he doesn't say anything. He just climbs into bed, clearly upset but refusing to say a word. Ellie thinks he's just exhausted from the day and wishes him sweet dreams. Quietly, he tells her to sleep well and uses her name for the first time since they met. Doesn't seem like a big deal if you ask me, but Ellie nearly has a heart attack. She's so happy that she goes to sleep with a smile on her face. A few hours later, she gets up to use the toilet and finds Damian missing from his bed. Betty is awake and saw the whole thing. Carson came and took him. The boys are currently teaching him a lesson outside in the snow. You would think he'd be mad about getting punished and the damage to his reputation, but he seems angrier about how Ellie was treating him. Geez, can he be any more obvious? Carson keeps pushing him, trying to get Damian to fight back. He doesn't expect the kid to actually stand up for himself, but after everything Ellie taught him, Damian refuses to sit back and take another beating. He's about to throw a punch when Carson catches him off guard, saying Ellie was only nice to him because she pitied him. And that strikes a chord with him. After all, the first thing she said when he arrived was that he looked weak. What if all this time she just thought he was pathetic? Carson has finally hit the mark. Damian is right back to his days as a slave, being told he's worthless and no one truly cares for him. Oh, this is too sad. I can't watch. Carson kicks him, grabs his shirt, and pulls him back to his feet, only to throw him in the river. What the heck is he thinking? It's the middle of winter. He'll freeze to death in seconds. Lucky for him, Ellie arrives with superhero timing and catches him right before he hits the water. Oh boy, Carson's really done it now. Apparently, this isn't the first time Carson's tried to push kids into the water. That's how she knew where they'd be. She ran over as fast as she possibly could and made it just in time to give Carson the scolding of his life. This stupid bully still hasn't realized that she doesn't like him anymore. He's racking his brains, trying to think when she stopped joining in on their games. And more than anything, he can't understand why she's chosen to protect Damian of all people. He's so angry and confused that he lashes out, aiming another punch at Damian while screaming that this is all his fault. Ellie grabs him, throwing them both out of his path while Carson goes sailing towards the water. Serves him right. I hope he freezes to death. While the boys are trying to help Carson onto the banks, Ellie and Damian hightail it out of there. Damian is surprised at how angry his protector seems. Is she mad because she cares about him or because he's such a burden? Carson got so in his head that now he can't tell. And it doesn't help when Ellie rounds on him, asking why he didn't stand up for himself like she told him to. He asks her straight up if she only helped him because she thought he was pathetic. If that's the case, he says there's no need to worry. He's used to this kind of hardship. That's so sad. Clearly, Ellie wants to yell at him to stop being an idiot, but instead, she apologizes. If she hadn't called him weak on the first day, then he would never have thought this way. Actually, the truth is that he's stronger than all of them. He's already proven that 10 times over. Damian can't quite believe it, but he's so relieved that he starts to cry. Someone just needs to give this kid a hug already. Ellie reassures him that she doesn't hate him. When he mentions one time that she avoided making eye contact, she turns away, blushing, and promises there was a perfectly good reason for that. Yeah, a perfectly good reason called a crush. As soon as Damian turns those baby blues on her, she gets flustered, and Pinky promises never to avoid his gaze again. He likes holding her hand so much that he doesn't let go, and asks if they can sit together at every meal from now on. Ellie agrees, but on one condition. From now on, he really can't let anyone walk over him. He should ask for the things he wants. He should speak out if he doesn't like something. Finally, after their little powwow in the woods, this unlikely duo head back to the orphanage to get his wounds cleaned. Damian is convinced at last that everything Ellie said was true. Now he trusts her even more than before and is starting to believe they will really stick by each other through thick and thin. It must be hard since he's never had a friend before, though if things keep on going the way they've been, I don't think these two will be friends much longer. Meanwhile, Duchess is still looking for the son of his best friends and the usual brutal means to do so. After 10 years, he's developed the ruthless tactic of searching area after area and cutting down anyone who wastes his time with lies or misinformation. Yikes! Is anyone else a little worried about this guy becoming Ellie's dad? Not to mention sweet baby Damian. Back at the orphanage, Ellie has cleaned up Damian's wounds and is trying to get him to go to bed. Of course, he only wants to sleep with his big sister/savior. Well, he does get pretty bad nightmares, and we already know Ellie can't say no to those baby blues. She agrees, so Damian climbs in beside her, suddenly smiley once again. Ellie gives him a little pat, calling him her baby brother, and suddenly the smile disappears. He makes a point of saying they're not siblings and suddenly turns away. Ellie thinks he's just mad because he doesn't want to be treated like a kid and tries to take it back. Instead, she says that she feels super comfortable with Damian, which seems to appease him for the time being. I think we can all tell this is going to become a problem down the line. At last, Ellie is able to tuck him into bed and get him to sleep. That night, for the very first time, Damian doesn't have any nightmares. Actually, he dreams of Ellie and him sitting on a field and braiding flower crowns. Oh my gosh, this kid is too pure to be the protagonist! Unfortunately, the dream can't protect him from everything that happened yesterday, and he wakes up sick. He was literally beat up in the snow. Of course he was going to get sick. His temperature is so high that he'll have to stay in bed for at least a few days, which causes Ellie to panic. She orders him to stay in bed, promising to return from her chores as soon as possible with some soup to help him recover. She leaves Tommy in charge and heads to the director's office for her cleaning. She's hoping to steal some more medicine when the director leaves, but today is not her day. The director is in a bad mood because of their financial situation. They're in a lot of debt, so she's thinking of selling some of the magic stones she keeps locked away in her cabinet. Oh yeah, apparently that's a thing. Some people in this world are born with magical abilities, but those who aren't can use magical stones to even the odds. They can only be crafted by a magician and are therefore very precious. How convenient that they just happen to have a whole cabinet full of them. Obviously, they're very valuable, so the director doesn't want to part with them. Looking at Ellie, she becomes angry about her mother. If it wasn't for her reputation as a thief, she could have sold Ellie a long time ago at a very high price because of her looks. One of the teachers comes in to interrupt her thoughts with more bad news. Because Duchess is tirelessly searching for the heir of Clyder, nobles are adopting less and less orphans. Probably because they're worried about getting cut up like the other guys we just saw. Ever since the disappearance, the Duke has searched far and wide for a child with black hair and blue eyes. Word got around about the heir's appearance, so as her latest attempt to turn her fortune around, the director ordered her teachers to spread a rumor that they found him. I bet she has no idea that it's actually him. The teachers are a little worried about Duke Schuetz turning on them if Damian isn't truly Duke Clyder's lost heir. But as Ellie already knows, that's not a problem, and the timing couldn't be better. With Damian's fever steadily climbing, he needs proper medical attention fast. While they eagerly anticipate the Duke's arrival, he is once again causing a crime scene in some poor people's mansion. They seem to have deceived him somehow, not realizing exactly who they were messing with. The Duke has his sword at the throat of a woman who is begging for mercy. Schutz doesn't seem to care one bit, but his right-hand man asks him to listen to their side first. The Duke still isn't interested. Apparently, they committed a fatal crime, for which the punishment is death. Excuses are irrelevant right now. All he wants to know is where the heir has gone, and that's when we find out that this woman is actually the slave owner who had Damian before he came to the orphanage. Okay, I've changed my mind. He can go ahead and kill her. The lady tells him about the orphanage, trying to reason that the decision was actually for Damian's own good. But the Duke is so enraged that he raises his sword, ready to kill the lady and her accomplice. Once again, his right-hand man, whose name is Ante, is their savior. The woman wasn't lying. A few days ago, he received a letter stating that a nearby orphanage had taken in a child matching exactly the right description. And he decided to reveal that right now? These two are just as psycho as each other. I'm not sure I want Damian growing up with these kind of people. But even Ante isn't safe from his fury. He wanted to confirm the news before suggesting it, in case Schutz got angry and blamed him for the mix-up, like he's doing right now. It really looks like he's about to turn on his own man when one of the victims confirms that the message they received mentions exactly the orphanage they sent Damian to. Which is great, but still not worth sparing their lives, apparently. When the director receives word that the Duke is on his way, she nearly has a stroke. She just found out that Damian is sick. Ironically, so is Carson, but nobody cares about that. She can't present the Duke with a dying boy, so it looks like it's time to sell one of her magic stones for drugs. Only one of them appears to have gone mysteriously missing. Upstairs, Ellie is doing things the old-fashioned way and tending to Damian at his bedside. Damian's fever is really high, but he refuses to sleep. He just wants Ellie to stay by his side. In case you hadn't already guessed, Ellie stole one of the mana stones to help Damian recover. Luckily, he soon falls asleep, allowing her to sneak out and get some real medicine. But the director has caught on and came straight upstairs to find her. She sees right through her lies and reaches into her pocket to grab the mana stone. Ellie keeps trying to play it off until the director mentions her mother, which really gets her blood boiling. Clearly, the director just wants to take out her anger on someone. She's about to slap Ellie when Damian appears, forcing himself between them and warning her to back off. Finally! Why is he so good at defending other people but not himself? The director is a little flustered. In the moment of her hesitation, a teacher comes skidding around the corner, screaming that the Duke is on his way. Suddenly, the orphanage is full of people yelling and cleaning up in preparation for his arrival. The director orders all boys with black hair and blue eyes to line up, but ignores Damian. She doesn't want a kid in his condition to embarrass the orphanage, and before Ellie can disagree, he suddenly faints. Oh no, how the heck is Ellie supposed to get him in front of the Duke in this condition? The teachers gather out front to welcome the Duke, who cuts to the chase right away. He asks to see the director, who is hiding inside, and wants him to bring the kid in question outside. They've all been told to keep their mouths shut, so in the end, he storms inside, determined to find Damian himself. He is not very impressed with the orphanage, which is understandable since it's more of a slave house than a home for children. He's just rounding the corner when Ellie appears, bumping into him and hitting her head. She really plays it up, acting as cute and innocent as she can. She even calls him Uncle. Oh, girl, didn't you read the book? This is not the man you want to be calling Uncle. Ellie tells them that there are 5 kids lined up in the director's room waiting for him, which confuses the visitors. Why did they lie about the director when she was here the whole time? She runs off, leaving the men to find the office. The director is waiting with her fakest smile and 4 young boys with dark hair and blue eyes. Schutz pulls out a magical stone with the energy of Duke Clyder. If his son is present, it's supposed to glow. Since Damian isn't there, it doesn't light up, so the Duke gives his second order to kill them all. Whoa, buddy, slow down! Violence is not always the answer! Thanks to Ellie, the Duke notices that there's one child missing. He draws his sword and forces the director to reveal the last child, the one she's been hiding. Wow, Ellie is seriously too clever for her own good. She's already perfectly positioned herself by Damian's bedside, ready for the Duke's arrival. This is for the best, but now the idea of her best friend being taken away is a little bittersweet. When the Duke storms into the dormitory, Damian looks wary. He doesn't understand that this man is here for him and instead gets up to protect Ellie. What a little hero! The Duke is strangely amused by his hostility. For such a small kid, he sure seems brave. But his amusement disappears completely when he reaches into his pocket to find the magical stone glowing bright blue. It lights up the whole room, which is a pretty clear sign. As soon as the stone is put away, Damian faints again. But this time, it's not because of his illness. Apparently, he reabsorbed the energy that he lost when he was separated from his parents. The Duke places the stone in his hands, and immediately Damon's fever begins to subside. That was a close one. I'm not sure how much longer he would have lasted. The teachers run off to grab the adoption papers, hoping to get this terrifying Duke out of their orphanage as fast as possible. Duke Schuetz lays Damian gently back on his bed, while Ellie promises to take over his care. That turns his attention back to her. After all, the Duke is smart enough to realize that she approached him deliberately. What he doesn't understand is why she didn't lead him to Damian right away. Ellie answers carefully, not wanting to take the same path as her character from the original plot. She tells him the truth, that she wanted him to see how bad the situation is for the kids in the orphanage. That way he might understand how much Damian had been through, and how difficult things have been for these children who had to look after themselves. After that, the Duke is swayed and decides to adopt her too. Ellie wasn't expecting that one bit, and maybe she would have refused if Damian wasn't still so clingy. He hasn't quite recovered yet, and considering how he reacted last time, it's probably best if she just goes along with things. He'd probably have a tantrum and run away if they were separated. The director doesn't want Ellie leaking the secrets of the orphanage, so she tries to convince him not to adopt her by revealing the truth about her mother. At last, we get a little more background on the famous criminal history of Ellie's mother. During the last war of the Empire, a thief managed to break into the Imperial Palace and steal a number of precious items. The Emperor was so furious that he ordered a massive search party, and in the end, Ellie's mother was hanged for her crimes. Although, there is a rumor that she took her own life when she knew that she was caught. Talk about a tragic backstory. But the Duke, as always, seems totally unfazed. Actually, he gives Ellie the choice. Does she want to come with him or stay? Obviously, no one in their right mind would want to choose to stay at this place. So Ellie agrees to go, on one condition. The Duke has to fire every one of the teachers, including the director. That way the other children won't suffer without her there. She's got such a big heart. I don't know about you guys, but I wouldn't have thought twice if someone offered me the chance to leave. The Duke accepts and leaves Ante to carry out the order. Now Ellie can leave with a light conscience. While she says goodbye to the other orphans, the Duke heads out to the woods for a cigar. He can feel Damian watching him. With his usual hostile glare, he asks the Duke why he's taking them away. Why Ellie? Why him? The Duke doesn't answer outright. I mean, it's kind of a long story. But he assures the kid that he's only taking them back to where they belong. He'll have all the answers soon. Damian still doesn't trust the Duke. Who would, given his horrible attitude? But he wants to protect Ellie, and the only way to do that is to stay with her. Braver than most kids, he warns the Duke not to make Ellie do anything she doesn't want to, or else. I just can't take him seriously when he says stuff like that. He's too cute. They hop in the carriages, and a few hours later, they arrive at the Schuetz estate. The staff are eagerly waiting to greet their master, but they weren't expecting a little girl to arrive with him. The butler, Fran, seems a little concerned, which makes Ellie defensive. She assures them she can take care of herself, no need for maids or extra attention. Word has already spread about the young Kleider heir's adoption, so the Duke sends them off to their room to rest. They may have survived the orphanage, but there's still a heck of a lot of people out to get them. Looks like Ellie can't retire from the big sister role just yet. A group of Schuetz nobles are already meeting to discuss the rumor. They're very unhappy to hear that the son of Duke Kleider was found alive and is now with the Duke. You see, for the past decade, the Schuetz family has been in charge of the previously owned Kleider trade union. Those who are allied with the Schuetz family don't want the Duke to give that up for some random orphan he found in the woods. One young Viscount is particularly determined not to lose any of the influence and power he gained when the Kleider family fell apart. The thing is, they're all too scared to say anything to the Duke. And speak of the devil, look who just arrived. He heard pretty much everything, so the nobles are a little flustered when he joins the meeting. They pretend to be happy about Damian's discovery, but make it clear that they don't see Damian as one of their own. They want him to fend for himself. But if Damian took his parents' name at this age, then he would be taken advantage of, or worse, killed. Duke Schuetz also tells his council about the girl he brought home, claiming she could be of use to the family. He announces that he plans to make them both his official heirs, causing total outrage. Wait, I don't get it. So he wants to carry on the Kleider family name, but he's adopting Damian as his heir? So what will happen to the Schuetz family? The nobles don't get it either. You see, the Duke's plan is to eventually get Ellie and Damian married so that he can stand on his own 2 feet and take up his position as head of the Kleider family. Once he's educated and married, the other nobles won't be able to threaten or take advantage of him, so he'll be protected. But in the meantime, the Schuetz family will spend all their money on raising these 2 kids, only to eventually lose control over the Kleider trade union when they leave. So you can see why these old men are mad. No matter how angry they get, the Duke is still the Duke, and it's not easy to depose him. The only one who still seems determined to stand in his way is that young Viscount. We're gonna have to keep an eye on that one. Unaware of all the politics, Ellie is just excited about her new gorgeous bedroom. Plus, she's got a small army of maids to tend to her every need. The head maid introduces herself as Rowena and encourages her to speak comfortably with them. Ellie feels a bit awkward acting casual with adults after her experience at the orphanage. But these ladies, whose names are Ebana, May, and Acel, are super sweet and have already taken a liking to their young mistress. They get to work at once, preparing her for a bath, which is even more awkward. I mean, wouldn't you find it kind of weird getting naked in front of a bunch of strangers who help you wash? No thank you. They introduce her to luxuries that Ellie has never had before, like fragrance oils. She only ever washed with cold water at the orphanage, so having a huge bath all to herself was like paradise. After a nice long bath, Ellie tumbles into bed, exhausted from the first day at the Schuetz estate. She rolls over, about to fall asleep, and bumps into another body on the bed. You didn't really think Damian would let her spend her first night alone now, did you? He's had the same special treatment and already looks more like an adorable heir with his haircut and fancy pajamas. Despite the fact that he literally snuck into her room to climb into her bed, he suddenly gets all shy thinking about how pretty she looks. Isn't he just the cutest? He's even more flustered once Ellie tells him about the plan to get the 2 of them married someday, because somehow she's already heard about that. Damian is too young to understand the concept of marriage, meaning Ellie has to try and explain the concept of love. As soon as she starts describing the feeling, Damian realizes he's down bad for her and starts hiccuping out of surprise. Ellie is also kind of embarrassed about the whole situation, but she's not taking it too seriously. One day, everyone will find out that her mother was the most famous thief in the Empire and she'll be dropped again. There's no way Duke Schuetz would let someone like her marry the heir of Kleider. She suggests they put some distance between them, which Damian immediately refuses. He makes excuses about having nightmares again, so Ellie has no choice but to snuggle up to him, just like they did back at the orphanage. Besides, he's been through a lot today. Ellie knows that everything will work out for him, but sweet little Damian probably still doesn't feel safe. So for now at least, she's happy to keep him company. Meanwhile, the Viscount who opposed Damian's adoption ordered an investigation and has discovered the truth about Ellie's mother. Of course, he is delighted to have something to use against Duke Schuetz and pays his informant handsomely for the information. Back at the estate, Ellie is preparing to be introduced to the elders and extended nobles of the Schuetz clan, aka the very people who are plotting to kick her out. She gets all dressed up in a pretty pink dress and waits for Damian to emerge. While she's waiting, a maid comes in asking if Viscount Corbino can greet Ellie personally. How much do you want to bet this is the guy who's been scheming? Our suspicions are confirmed. The main villain barges straight into Ellie's room, immediately making her uncomfortable. Although he's acting polite, Ellie can tell from his eyes that he has some kind of ulterior motive. She plays along, so he brings in a small gift, a blue hope stone that came from the Viscount's territory. Suddenly, the Viscount orders the head maid to leave, wanting a moment in private with Ellie. That's sus as heck. What kind of man asks to be alone with a young girl like that? But the head maid can't refuse, so she walks out, and immediately the Viscount's tone changes. He tells her not to look at the stone, saying she doesn't have the right. But then he does a complete 180 and decides to leave it with her, promising to send a maid back for it. Okay, he's obviously setting her up. He wants to make it look like she stole it. The maid he leaves behind encourages her to look at it a little closer, but at just the right moment, Rowena returns and announces that Damian is ready. Ellie gets up to leave, and the maid starts to sweat. As you probably already guessed, she was ordered to slip the stone into her pocket so that they could frame her. So she attempts to complete her mission and does a very dramatic display of tripping and falling to the ground, just about managing to get the stone in her pocket as she does so. Oh no, did Ellie realize? The whole thing was clearly suspicious, but maybe she didn't notice. Ellie is about to go to the council meeting, but goes over to check that the maid didn't dirty her dress first. When the kids arrive at the council, the nobles make it very clear that they're not pleased with the Duke's choice of bride for Damian. But Ellie doesn't care about their reaction. Actually, they don't seem as hostile as she was expecting. It could have been worse. The Viscount steps in right away to address the Duke. Oh, here we go. He claimed to bring the Blue Hope Stone as a present for Damian, but after a little whisper from the maid, he announces very loudly that it's disappeared under mysterious circumstances. For a bunch of villains, these guys are pretty awful actors. The maid and Viscount Corbino perform this whole scene about how the last person to see it was Ellie, at which point the Viscount reveals that the girl's mother was the Empire's most famous thief. The nobles are outraged. How could the Duke bring home the daughter of a criminal to be the future Duke Clyder's bride? With that excuse, the Viscount asks for permission to search Ellie, knowing that the blue Modest Stone is already in her pocket. Ellie tries to defend herself, clearly upset, although she's the only one in this room who can actually act. Did she maybe manage to slip the Monostone back in the maid's pocket? Ellie eventually allows him to search her, on the condition that the Viscount should formally apologize if she's innocent. Obviously, he accepts because he doesn't think that there's a chance in heck that she could be clean. Otherwise, he would never accept the humiliation of apologizing to a child. The maid drops down to Ellie's height and begins to search her, apologizing in advance. Yeah, you should be sorry. You tried to frame a child. How evil can you get? Miraculously, Ellie's pockets are empty. When the Viscount hears that, he becomes desperate and tries to search her himself. What an idiot! The nobles start to whisper about how he accused her so quickly, which makes the Viscount lose his cool. He grabs her by the shoulders and starts shaking her, demanding to know where she hid the gem. Oh, now you've done it. The Duke steps in and pulls the Viscount away, calling him a psycho for losing his temper on a child. Since he got suspicious so quickly, the Duke decides to return the favor and has Anpe search the Viscount. And guess what? The stone was in his pocket the whole time. Even he seemed shocked. How the heck did Ellie pull this off? Pay attention, guys, because this is about to blow your minds. As we suspected, Ellie noticed when the stone was slipped into her pocket because of the tiny change in weight. When checking the maid's dress, she slipped the stone back into the maid's pocket and only took it back after the maid had searched her at the council meeting and found nothing. Then, when the Viscount bent down to check her himself, she slipped the stone into his pocket instead. I don't know about you guys, but I can never pull all that off. I guess it pays to be the daughter of a mastermind criminal. The Duke, for one, seems very pleased to have an excuse to punish Corbino and orders Ante to drag him from the council room. While he's outside, probably being tortured within an inch of his life, Schuetz orders the other nobles to apologize since they were so quick to turn against Ellie because of her parentage. After seeing what happened to the Viscount, they get down on their knees without hesitation. Isn't it so satisfying to see old men apologizing to a little girl? Ellie's barely been here 2 days, and she's such a girl boss already. Finally, they take their places round the table and start the council meeting. The Duke raises the issue of Damian's marriage, and the other nobles protest once again at the idea of a future Duke marrying a commoner. Duke Schuetz surprisingly understands. That's why he wants to find a family to adopt Ellie and give her noble status. Only, that might be a little tricky now that the secret is out about her mother. Though it doesn't seem like the nobles will have much to say in the matter. Duke Schuetz gives Ellie a chance to pick, but she can't imagine anyone accepting her. No noble children would be happy about having a commoner sibling. What if she ends up an outcast all over again? Of course, our girl has been through a lot already, so she thinks she can handle it. While she's trying to choose, a maid arrives with a message for Baron Amanda. Apparently, his wife is sick and her illness has suddenly gotten worse. The Baron excuses himself while the other nobles gossip about the Amanda family. It turns out they discovered a new mineral mine very recently, but haven't been able to profit much from it since the Baron is so preoccupied with his wife's condition. Suddenly, Ellie remembers where she's heard that name before. The Baron Amanda is a pretty average nobleman, but later in the story, he will craft a sword from the minerals in that mine. And thanks to that sword, Damian will succeed in battle. It's a small part to play, but at least the family will be rich. Ellie asks Duke Schuetz if she can join the Amanda family, and he tells her she'll need to convince the Baron first. He even warns her that her little trick with Corbino won't work on him. That man doesn't miss a thing. After the council meeting is over, Damian and Ellie can go back to acting like kids. A few days later, they visit a small greenhouse on the Schuetz estate, where they can play among the flowers and forget all about the politics for a while. The kids find flowers that remind them of each other, and Ellie tells Damian about the plan to make her the daughter of Baron Amanda. All that really means is that her last name will change. She's still going to stay at the Duke's estate and be by Damian's side as he starts his swordsmanship training. Since they'll start being busy soon, they decide to spend the whole day playing and end up in the woods outside after dark. Suddenly, there's a loud noise, and they turn around to find a shadowy figure approaching them. Ellie shields Damian, but nothing happens. When they turn around, it's not a monster, but an older lady behind them. She doesn't seem to have any idea where she is, and she seems unwell. She's wearing upper-class clothes, so she can't be a servant. Ellie wants to get her inside so she doesn't freeze to death, but she seems too frightened to walk into a castle full of strangers right now. So she puts on her sweetest smile and introduces herself to the woman. Unfortunately, she doesn't seem to know who she is, or anything really. It's possible she has dementia, but the most important thing right now is to get her out of the cold. Ellie invites her to come and play with Damian and her in the greenhouse since it's so warm and pretty over there. The woman takes a liking to her and comes with them. Ellie starts asking questions, hoping to get a name or find out why she was in the cold. But at the perfect moment, someone calls out for her. It's Baron Amanda, who's been looking for her everywhere. So that means this must be Vieira Amanda, his sickly wife. You would think he'd be relieved they brought her inside, but the Baron seems deeply suspicious of Ellie. He accuses her of trying to take advantage of his wife's condition, which activates Damian's protective little brother mode. He even goes so far as to scold the Baron for speaking so rudely to her, so Ellie has to hold him back. But instead of getting angry at Damian, the Baron just acts even ruder to her and tells her not to bother with any of the Duke's little schemes. Yikes! Maybe she chose the wrong family. That man clearly has no intention of adopting her. After they leave, maid Ivana comes running up to them with a worried expression. She asks if they met the Baron and his wife and tells them to stay away from the Baroness if they see her again. Ellie's suspicions are confirmed. She does in fact have a form of dementia, which means she could become dangerous or difficult to handle if she's had a bad episode. You see, the Baroness was perfectly fine until she had her son, Sir Gerait. After giving birth, she became much weaker, and her illness continues to worsen day by day. Everyone thinks there's no cure, but Ellie doesn't think that's right. When Vieira recognized her husband, she returned to her senses at once. Maybe there's more to this than meets the eye. When the Baron and Baroness return to their quarters, the Baron begs his wife not to wander off in future. She agrees, but tells him he shouldn't be mad at Ellie. If it wasn't for her, she might have died of hypothermia. She wants to see the kids again, and even asks her husband to apologize to them. It seems Ellie made a good impression on her. The next day, the kids are messing around when Rowena interrupts them, announcing that the Baron and Baroness Amanda have come to visit. They literally walk in bowing, apologizing straight away for the misunderstanding yesterday. That was quick. Ellie accepts their apology and asks only one thing in return. Vieira's symptoms are worsened when she's in a heightened emotional state, so if the Baron speaks more gently to her, she might get a little better. She also asks for permission to hang out with the Baroness from time to time. The Baron is probably against the idea, but once he sees how his wife warms up around her, he doesn't have much choice. They have their first little tea party only a few days later in the greenhouse, where they discuss Ellie's arrival in the Schuetz estate up north. Vieira is very caring and considerate and seems to have taken a liking to her already. The conversation gets a little darker when they turn to the subject of Damian's adoption. The Baroness tells her honestly about the Great War 15 years ago that came about because of a prophecy. The whole conflict centered around the Tree of Life, a natural power with magical properties that can increase mana in anyone that comes nearby. As such, those who live near the tree have unique magical powers and don't need mana stones to use them. One day, the tree wilted and everything went downhill from there. The Imperial family were able to save the tree, but hid the truth of how from the people to keep their power a secret. War broke out, and during the long days at battle, the Kleider and Schuetz families became friends. In the end, the Empire was victorious, and the Dukes returned from battle as war heroes. But honor wasn't the only thing Duke Schuetz brought back. He also returned with Miss Yuria, who became his wife. Throughout history, the Schuetz family had been afflicted with a curse that made half of them go mad. But after meeting Yuria, the Duke became calm. She was from an enemy land, so maybe she had abilities that helped control his curse. For 3 years, they were happily married, but then, when the Duke went off to battle, Yuria used her magic to completely get rid of the curse, which ended up taking her life. After that, Duke Schwitz cut off all ties with the outside world for years. Until the day he received a letter about his best friend Kleider's newborn son. But as soon as Schwitz opened his gates and went to visit them, they were murdered. So that's why he's got such a terrifying personality. He lost his wife and best friend around the same time. It's a wonder he didn't turn into a villain. The conversation then switches to the Baroness's son and their family mines. Hoping to accelerate their fortune, Ellie asks if she can visit the mine sometime soon. Garrett is Baron Amanta and Vieira's son. He works hands-on in their family's mine, and he is desperate to develop it. That's the only way to make his parents happy, right? Well, actually wrong. Baron Amanta stands behind Garrett, his unexpected arrival startling his own son. Contrary to Garrett's beliefs, Baron Amanta reassures him that there's no need to pressure himself with the mine. This bewilders Garrett, but it motivates him even more, insisting that he'll do his best. Out of nowhere, Vieira arrives with Ellie, much to Baron Amanta's surprise. Curious as ever, Ellie immediately looks around, poking her nose in Garrett's business. Garrett welcomes her warmly, entertaining her antics and showing her some interesting mana-infused items like his special monocle. When she rushes over to the rare ores, Garrett panics. He hurries to catch her in time, warning her not to touch them, because once a person touches them, the ores latch onto the skin, making them impossible to get off. Ellie immediately steps back, remarking that the ore is just like a monster. Damian once said that once monsters grab you, they don't ever let go. Hearing this, the gears in Garrett's head start clicking as an old memory resurfaces. When he was younger, he encountered a similar thing. He and his father had just finished exterminating monsters when a strange gem caught his attention. He bent down to touch them but was quickly stopped by a villager. Pretty as the gem may be, it's actually a monster that digs into human flesh once it makes contact with humans. Realization then hits Garrett. The ore in their mine is a monster ore. Seeing him sprint to tell Baron Amanta, Ellie smiles warmly. Her plan of dropping clues for Garrett had worked. If the plot progresses like the original novel, soon House Amanta would be forging weapons from monster ores. That night, Duke Schwitz ponders on Ellie's schemes of late. To be honest, he's quite impressed that she managed to befriend Baroness Vieira instead of approaching the Baron directly. Speaking of Baron Amanta, Franz hands Duke Schwitz a gift from him. It's an arrow made from the monster ore. Now, it's definitely not a sword, but House Amanta is working on developing more weapons using the monster ore, a discovery made possible thanks to Ellie. This intrigues Duke Schwitz, and Franz explains that Ellie's monster remark had played a part in helping the Amantas figure out what they're dealing with. The only reason Duke Schwitz brought Ellie with him was because he thought she was an Imperial spy. But her wits really are impressive, and for some reason, that speculation alone just pisses him off. Deep down, he really doesn't want to believe that Ellie is a spy. Just then, Franz senses someone eavesdropping on their conversation. He unsheaths a dagger, only to find Ellie at the study's entrance. She greets Franz warmly, telling him she came to see Duke Schwitz. She actually was eavesdropping, but it's a good thing she came prepared. When Duke Schwitz emerges from the doorway, Ellie immediately hands him a small gift. She heard from Roina that he suffers from constant headaches, so she came to give him some medicine. Duke Schwitz takes it from Franz, but he knows better. This isn't the real reason why she's here. Caught red-handed, Ellie concedes, admitting her true purpose. She wants Duke Schwitz to adopt her instead of Duke Amanta. Duke Schwitz is dumbfounded by her request. Straightforwardly, he tells Ellie that he hates inconveniences, much more children. Realizing that there's no reasoning with him, Ellie retreats, accepting defeat. Left alone, Duke Schwitz is left wondering, why does he keep hoping Ellie isn't a spy? Looks like Ellie has slowly weaved herself into his heart. The following day, Ellie muses on the novel's timeline. She has 9 years before the female lead appears, which means she needs to come up with a survival plan as early as now. That morning, she walks with Vieira, who informs her that Baron Amanta has offered to assist Damian with his training. This delights Ellie, but there's something that worries her. Will Damian get along well with Baron Amanta? He better! That guy's training is the key to Damian's success, after all. The two ladies decide to pay Damian a visit, but when they enter the training room, he's all roughed up. Ellie rushes to his side, but he assures her that he's all right. She breathes a sigh of relief, but only then does she realize that all the knights are huffing in exhaustion too. Yeah, I don't think Damian is the one you should be worrying about. Beaming, Ellie informs him that she'll be watching him train every now and then. Hearing this, Damian becomes flustered, but all the more motivated to train harder. Just then, Baron Amanta finally arrives. Seeing Ellie there, he presents her a gift. A bow infused with mana. Of course, a sword is more useful, but House Amanta can't produce such weapons yet. But maybe Waybrock could. Waybrock is a famous blacksmith at Schweitz Castle. Almost everyone gets their swords made by him, however, he stopped working ever since he went blind in one eye. It's not that the doctors can't cure him, rather, Waybrock himself refuses treatment. Ellie has tons of questions about Waybrock, but she knows Baron Amanta won't spill any more information. Looks like Mission Investigate Waybrock is officially a motion in Ellie's mind. Moments later, Damian's training with the Baron is set to begin. However, Damian hesitates. He doesn't want to train with someone who is rude to Ellie. Hearing Damian's reasons, Ellie feels her heart clench. Still, she doesn't want him to worry about her that much. After all, Baron Amanta has already made amends. Damian may trust Ellie, but Ellie can only hope that he learns to trust the Baron just as much. For her sake, Damian agrees to give the Baron another chance, much to Ellie's delight. Soon enough, the much-anticipated training commences. Halfway through, Franz drops by, eager to observe Damian's training. He hides a bow behind him. It's supposed to be Duke Schweitz's gift for Ellie, but it seems like Baron Amante is already a step ahead. Great minds do think alike. Just then, a loud thud is heard as Baron Amante lands a hit on Damian. Naturally, Ellie is beyond worried, but she forces herself to stand back. She can't always run to his side, and at one point, Damian needs to learn how to get back up on his own. As everyone observes, Baron Amante collects himself. He never expected Damian to be able to hold his own against him. The way he predicts his opponent's moves, the Baron is more than impressed. Without notice, Damian lunges forward, charging at the Baron. The Baron can only wonder what horrors Damian had to endure as a slave to become so strong at such a young age. Still, he's tasked to train Damian to become stronger, so he can't afford to go easy on him. With one quick move, he disarms Damian. He remarks that Damian is good at offensive swordsmanship, but not so when it comes to defensive. Hearing this, Damian tries again, but he is repeatedly disarmed. Finally, the Baron calls it a day for them, much to Damian's dismay. Behind him, the Baron sees Ellie glaring at him intently, making him chuckle. She's so protective of Damian. Ellie approaches an exhausted Damian, but when she reaches him, he surprisingly reassures her that he'll work harder to become strong enough to protect his loved ones. By loved ones, he really only means you, Ellie. In the back of Ellie's mind, she muses. Those are the same words Damian said to the female lead. Will it make a difference to the plot if he says it this early into the story? Brushing it off, she indulges Damian's aspirations just in time for lunch. A few days later, Ashelle takes Ellie and Damian to the palace's Red Lake. But beautiful as it is, she warns them not to get too close. Apparently, many people have drowned and perished in its waters. Unfortunately, because there's mana within the lake bed, the Duchy can't fill the lake. Suddenly, a cabin door from behind them flies open and a large, hairy man emerges. Scary as he looks, he doesn't pose a danger to them. Instead, he drinks booze right in front of them. Having had his drink, he shoots Ashelle a glare, reminding her that it's dangerous to bring children near the lake. Ashelle immediately heeds his words, apologizing as she leads the children away. She then bids him farewell, calling him Waybrock. Hearing this, Ellie's eyes widen and she interrogates Ashelle as soon as they arrive back at the palace. Turns out, Waybrock once had a daughter who drowned in the lake. By chance, Duke Schweitz's wife, Lady Yuria, was around the same age as his daughter, and Waybrock found comfort in spending time with her, allowing him to cope. But when she too died, Waybrock just wasn't the same anymore. I mean, it's like losing his daughter a second time. Having learned all this, both children promise to stay away from the lake. Yet, despite Ellie's promise, she still plans to return the following day. Exactly as planned, Ellie ditches everyone after breakfast the following day. She makes her way back to the lake when, unexpectedly, she sees the castle physician exit Waybrock's cabin. She's about to approach him when she overhears a rather intriguing conversation. On a call with a nobleman through a magic crystal, the physician admits that he's deliberately been causing Waybrock's vision to worsen. Together, they plan to bring down Duke Schweitz by getting rid of Waybrock. The kicker? They also plan to prevent Waybrock and Baron Amanta from collaborating and developing the monster ore. Ugh, what two-faced traitors they are! Sometime later, Waybrock is awoken to the sounds of crows cawing non-stop. He steps out to silence them, but when he sees a child, Ellie, squatting near the lake, he immediately bolts to save her from harm's way. He reprimands her for being so reckless, but he calms down quickly, fearing he might frighten Ellie even more. When asked what she's doing by the lake, Ellie holds up Baron Amanta's gift, a bow and arrow. She tells Waybrock that she wanted to practice shooting with a bow, and the lakeside is the only place devoid of people. She shows Waybrock the arrow, and just as she expected, his interest is piqued by the monster ore. When welcomed into his cabin, the first thing that Ellie does is steal the medicine the physician has been giving him. Luckily, Waybrock doesn't notice. Trust me, it's for your own good. By the fireplace, the two talk heartily as Waybrock brings up his late daughter. Ever the empath, Ellie recounts the story of her own mother's death. She may not know the depth of Waybrock's grief, but she wants him to know one thing: his daughter's death isn't his fault. Hearing Ellie's sincerity, Waybrock's gaze softens, and for the first time in a while, he finds himself comforted. By sunset, Waybrock sees Ellie off as she heads home. Considering how interested Waybrock is with her arrow, Ellie decides to leave it with him until he finishes examining it. When she tells him to return it to the castle, Waybrock is taken aback. He's about to refuse, but it's too late. Ellie has run off already. By morning, Waybrock has barely slept a wink. He wants to examine the ore more, but he has no intention of going back on his word about returning it. For the first time in years, he heads out to the castle. But to his dismay, the guards refuse him entry, claiming not to know him. The exchange is about to get hostile, but luckily, someone intervenes. Viera. The two are old friends, so she personally vouches for him and welcomes him inside, much to Waybrock's gratitude. When she leads him to where Ellie is, even Baron Amanta is shocked to see him. But he's even more confused about how Waybrock and Ellie know each other. Over tea, Ellie explains everything, and the adults soon catch up with years of missed contact. Later, the conversation deepens, and Baron Amanta asks Waybrock to collaborate with him in making a sword out of monster ore. However, his excitement gets the best of him, and he soon retracts as he remembers Waybrock's eye situation. He still can't understand why he refuses treatment, though. This confuses Waybrock. He hasn't been refusing treatment at all. In fact, he's been seeing the castle physician regularly. Suddenly, he stops. He wasn't able to take his medicine yesterday, yet his vision is clear as day today. A chill runs down his spine as he realizes he's been deceived and toyed with. Fuming, he clenches his fist as he asks Baron Amanta for a favor. Messing with his health is so inhumane. All the vassals of the Schweitz Duchy gather for their regular meeting. Among the attendees are Dr. Darren and his conspirator, Viscount Quintar. For Viscount Quintar's report, he presents a newly forged sword before Duke Schweitz, claiming it far surpasses all other swords forged before it. Confident as ever, he intends to replace Waybrock and his metalworks. When the floor passes to Baron Amanta, Viscount Quintar takes a jab at him, remarking how absurd it is that House Amanta can only forge bows and arrows and not actual swords. The rising tension prompts Duke Schweitz to change the topic. He turns to Darren and asks about Waybrock's condition, catching Darren and the Viscount off guard. Yet despite the hot seat, Darren still manages to maintain his lie, claiming that Waybrock still refuses treatment. Just then, their meeting is interrupted by Roina, who urgently calls for Darren. Apparently, Ellie is suffering from excruciating pain caused by the eye drops he gave her. When she shows him the eye drops, all color drains from his face. It's Waybrock's medicine. He doesn't know how Ellie came to possess it, but he knows its effects all too well. It's a fluid he made from the Red Lake's cursed water, after all. If Ellie goes blind because of his concoction, Duke Schweitz may just have his head. Panicking, he orders Roina to lead the way. There's no time to waste. He needs to check Ellie because she had just come into contact with poison. He hurriedly exits the door, but to his horror, Waybrock stands there waiting for him. Realizing that he's been cornered, Darren refuses to go down alone. From his pocket, he unveils a recording device and replays his conversation with Viscount Quintar, ratting him out as the mastermind behind all the schemes. Behind them, Duke Schweitz rises, exuding immense bloodlust. Justice will soon be served. Taking the sword Viscount Quintar presented earlier, Duke Schweitz is about to put it to use. Unexpectedly, Waybrock presents him with a sword of his own making. It's been 10 years since he last forged a sword, but Duke Schweitz still accepts it willingly, even remarking that all other swords are inferior to his works. Now with the true sword in hand, Duke Schweitz shows no mercy. In one fell swoop, he eliminates the traitors. When he finishes, he turns to Waybrock, wondering how long he'll have to wait for his swords. After all, the Schweitz knights require the best, don't they? For some reason, this warms Waybrock's heart, and it's as if he just regained a worthiness he never knew he lost. Despite having taken care of the traitors, Duke Schweitz's aura still doesn't seem to be calming down. Without warning, he then exits the room, leaving everyone wondering where he's off to. Elsewhere, Ellie's room door flies open as Duke Schweitz enters. Seeing Ellie, he rushes to check if she's alright. But how can Ellie even begin to explain that she isn't hurt at all? She was just faking the whole thing to catch the bad guys. Seeing the Duke face Ellie in such a state, Ante immediately pulls him aside and asks him to wipe the blood off his skin with a handkerchief. He explains to a confused Duke that he himself may be used to the sight of blood, but the same can't be said for children like Ellie. With Ellie in mind, Duke Schweitz orders Ante and Roina to have beautiful, high-quality handkerchiefs made and distributed to all the knights. There may come a time when they encounter Ellie, and he can't have them frighten her with their bloody ensemble. He cares for Ellie so much more than he lets on. A few days later, Ellie and Damian head to Polline District for their first outing. They're both excited to explore the area as much as they can. But unbeknownst to anyone, Ellie's actually scouting for future merchant partners in advance. As they browse around, Ivana informs Ellie of the Duchy's customs. Usually when children go on their first outing, they buy presents for their family. Thinking about the Duke, Ellie can only wonder what it would take to please him. Oh, Ellie, anything from you would make him happy. Spotting a jewelry store, a pair of beautiful blue earrings catch Ellie's attention. They're the exact same color as Damian's eyes. Without thinking twice, she buys them. But from the corner of her eye, she notices a boy subtly slipping jewelry into his pocket. Before he can get far, she confronts him. Hearing this, the boy's parents are horrified by his actions and they force him to apologize. However, when they suggest punishing him, the boy finally breaks his silence. He admits that he was only forced to steal because they promised to give him bread. They aren't his parents at all. Rather, they're scammers who use children to do their bidding. Caught red-handed, the man and woman shove Ellie out of their way, attempting to escape. Luckily, Sir Rainier immediately gives chase. Meanwhile, Ellie turns to the boy, handing him a bracelet she stole from the scammer's pants cuffs. She figured that the bracelet was something important to him, so she did her best to take it back. As another good deed, Ellie buys him enough food and milk to feed his siblings, making the boy's heart swell with gratitude. He then introduces himself as Grace, leaving Ellie shocked. In the novel, Grace was a female knight who risked her life to aid the female lead, Ashabel. Staring at this child before her, she wonders if this is the same Grace. Just then, Sir Rainier returns to rejoin everyone, informing Ellie that he's caught the criminals. Ivana comes running too, bringing a bag of medicine to treat Ellie's scratches. Without further delay, May then orders their prompt return to the palace, much to Ellie's dismay. But being carried by Sir Rainier, she can barely protest. Before she leaves, though, she hands the bag of medicine to Grace, bidding her farewell until they see each other again. Back at the Schweitz castle, Waybrock, alongside Baron Amantha, presents the Duke with the newly crafted swords. However, their presentation is cut short when the children return from their outing. Ellie happily chats about their experience and shows off a pair of blue earrings she bought. But when she gives them to Damian, everyone is taken aback. As if that wasn't a stake to the heart already, Damian also presents a gift for Ellie, but nothing for the Duke. These two are always humbling Duke Schweitz. Seeing the Duke's mood plummet, Ante immediately chases after Ellie and Damian, wondering if they got anything for the Duke. Hearing this, Ellie smiles, her expression confident. Of course she brought him a gift. The gift in question? Sir Rainier's report of locating the hideout of a group of infamous pickpockets in the duchy. Apparently, Ellie managed to catch one of them, and this was her gift to the Duke. Satisfied, Ellie then takes her leave, leaving an appalled Duke Schweitz behind. That night, Ellie warmly tucks Damian to bed. Years from now, he would go through great pain and suffering at the hands of his love rivals. So for now, Ellie wants only happiness for Damian. In the cold of winter, Ellie sharpens her archery skills, every shot growing steadier under Lady Viera's watchful gaze. Viera is clearly impressed, which makes Ellie flustered. Praise has never been easy for her to accept. Yet what truly warms her is the gift from Baron Amantha. arrows crafted from the very ores his people mined. She treasures them deeply, more than words can show. Viera assures her that she belongs here, soon to be part of their family. At first, Ellie feels a spark of joy, but the thought quickly collides with bitter memories of failed adoptive families. She pushes the shadows away, unwilling to let them spoil this moment. Sensing her unease, Viera reminds her gently that their bond is not forged from duty or business, but from love. The sincerity in those words pierces Ellie's heart, leaving her quietly moved. Just then, Garrett arrives, drawing Ellie from her thoughts. She greets him brightly, eager to show off how well the arrows perform. Her excitement delights him, and he offers to guide her in proper technique. Viera watches fondly as her son begins teaching Ellie, their bond growing with every exchange. But Ellie's focus wavers, her mind wandering elsewhere, and her arrow veers wildly off course. Chasing it down, she halts abruptly. The sky above has turned black with crows circling in eerie silence. A chill runs through her. One crow lands on the snow before her, and before her eyes, it shifts into a man. A fine man, too, if you know what I mean. Startled, Ellie stumbles back as he demands to know who she is. Soon, more crows descend, transforming into human form one after another. The man steps closer, recognizing her. She's the one who restored their master's sight. Their master is Waybrock? Instead of hostility, he bursts into gratitude, thanking her for her kindness toward their master. Still, Ellie cannot hide her curiosity. She wonders why the monster or arrow seem powerless against him, as if the magic refuses to touch his kind. Just as Ellie gathers the courage to speak, Garrett steps in, pulling her protectively behind him. His sharp warning to the three strangers hangs heavy in the air, but the men quickly bow their heads, apologizing for the misunderstanding. They explain their true purpose, not harm, but gratitude. You see, these crow people only want one thing, the ability to make powerful swords unlike any other. After all, they're from a clan who has dedicated their lives to making the strongest weapons mankind has ever seen. Ellie blinks in surprise. She recalls tales of a legendary clan, famed for swords that could strike down evil itself. Could these men really be their descendants? Turns out the clan's chief died a long time ago, plunging the clan into turmoil. When they discovered Waybrock's works, it was like finding a new chief. A master. But when Waybrock stopped forging weapons, they fell into despair again. The men then deem Ellie their savior for saving Waybrock. Curious, she asks if they have ever met and spoken with Waybrock. Surprisingly, they shake their heads. No, they only watched him from afar, but still call him master. Garrett frowns, asking how Ellie can even understand their words. The question makes her pause. Wait, was she the only one hearing them clearly? That's weird. One of the men, Talam, offers wisdom. If Ellie can understand non-human languages, then she's either a descendant of the mystical tribes or the imperial family. Ellie laughs it off quickly. Her? Mystic or royalty? Not a chance. Heading back, Ellie brings them into Waybrock. The air grows tense under their stares, but she vouches for them. She explains they wish to assist, formally introducing them. They aren't so good at expressing themselves in human language, but they try their best. Waybrock hesitates, but Talam brings forth the monster ore, declaring they'll prove themselves by strengthening Ellie's arrows. The three mysterious men waste no time. Their hands move with practiced speed, and soon Ellie's arrows gleam sharper, stronger, almost alive with new power. Waybrock, hardened by years of craftsmanship, is stunned. Even Garrett, who's usually unreadable, narrows his eyes, clearly impressed. Talam and Ellie exchange a glance, barely able to hide their excitement. Ellie nudges Waybrock, asking if he'll take them as disciples. He hesitates, but Garrett cuts in, suggesting they first serve as assistants. Still looks like a win-win situation. Ellie, clever as ever, then tries securing a permanent role in all this. After all, she's the only one who can understand the Crow people directly. Egging Talam into her scheme, she plots to become an official interpreter for them, hoping to earn in the process. Later in the carriage, Viera notices her son's lighthearted mood. Garrett admits how much Ellie has changed their fortunes. Proud of Ellie, he even suggests telling Baron Amantha about Ellie's rare ability. But Viera's expression hardens. That kind of secret is dangerous. All members of the Mystic Tribes have died, and if Ellie has Imperial blood, all the worse. Garrett recoils. The idea of Ellie tied to the Imperial family feels absurd, but Viera presses on. What if Ellie's mother didn't just steal any Imperial object, but an Imperial child itself? If the Empress's eyes ever turned toward Ellie, she'd be in grave danger. Realizing the dangers, Garrett then promises silence. Back at the castle, Ellie wanders, restless. Faint noises draw her in, at first sounding like ghosts. But hidden in the bushes, she sees something far worse. Ante's blade dripping blood before Duke Schweitz. Ellie rushes to the Duke, panic and anger in her voice as she demands why Ante would dare attack him. "It's training," Ante answers calmly, but Ellie refuses to accept it. She steps in front of the Duke, shielding him. His presence looms behind her, mana rolling heavy, his cold gaze pressing like weight against her chest. It would be natural to recoil, yet Ellie doesn't. Instead, she reaches for him. Taking his hand, Duke Schweitz's aura softens, danger draining from his eyes. Ellie asks about his wounds, but he only studies her. Others tremble, yet she stands steady. It unsettles him. At last, he tells her to return to her room, but Ellie doesn't budge, her eyes shining with concern. Pressed, he admits the truth. His nights are restless, plagued by nightmares. Ellie softens. She offers something simple, to stay by his side and lull him to sleep as she once did for frightened children at the orphanage. Soon, she sits by his chamber. She hadn't expected him to agree, yet there he lies, waiting. The sight draws a quiet laugh. Ellie comforting the feared Duke. And strangely, he allows it. Beneath the covers, his voice turns curious. How has she never been plagued by nightmares herself? Her reply is steady, thoughtful. His expression wavers, his late wife's shadow flickering through. Then his next question cuts deeper. He asks for her mother's name, making Ellie stiffen. I'm so curious if Ellie's mother has a connection with the Duke's wife. Ellie hesitates, lips pressed tight. Still, after a pause, she softly reveals her mother's name, Shannon. The Duke shifts the moment with a dry remark about her skill at lulling him to sleep, or rather, lack of it. Yet he lets his eyes close, surrendering to rest. Just before sleep takes him, his voice grows low, apologizing for all she has endured, and for all the times he suspected her. The next day at the Maripe orphanage, priestesses arrived with gifts for the children. Among the crowd, Grace's eyes catch a girl who looks strikingly like Ellie. For a moment, she mistakes her, only to realize it isn't her at all. Grace apologizes, sharing that she shares the same bright green eyes with her friend, Ellie. But this leaves a bad taste in the girl's mouth, and suddenly she's intrigued by this Ellie. By evening, the priestesses depart. In the carriage, the girl, Aveli, grows quiet, but inside she seethes with envy. Ellie, embraced by the Schweitz family, lives the life she covets. Resentment simmers as the sun dips, her eyes briefly shimmering with an orange hue. Another priestess notices, but Aveli says it's a trick of light. That night in the temple, she drinks another potion, making her eyes green again. Then a voice cuts through the stillness. Her father, a noble viscount. His words drip with frustration as he calls her by her real name, Livia Forgel. He reminds her to hurry up with seizing power. After all, if it wasn't for Yuria, she would have been Duchess Schweitz. She needs to get closer to Duke Schweitz, even if it means marrying Damian. Someone call the police! An adult woman is using magic to pose as a child? Marry the son to get closer to the adoptive father? Creepy. From his office, Duke Schweitz watches Ellie's archery practice in silence. Franz dutifully reports about the pickpockets Ellie helped catch, but the Duke isn't listening. His gaze is fixed on adorable Ellie. At last, he rises, deciding to see her in person, with Franz stumbling after him, still mid-report. By the time they reach the grounds, Ellie is exhausted. Servinier moves to carry her, but the Duke intervenes, taking her into his arms instead. With the way the war-hardened Duke, known for his ruthlessness, holds Ellie so carefully, no one can hide their astonishment. His eyes then fall on her bow, the gift from Baron Amantha. She had chosen it for its quality, but the Duke feels a sting of jealousy. He demands to know where the bow he gave her has gone. Sensing danger, Ellie quickly praises his bow, saving Franz from her guardian's temper. Yet worry soon replaces jealousy. Holding Ellie, the Duke notices her frail weight. Without a word, he sweeps her off to a restaurant, determined to feed her properly. Later, Ellie asks to visit the knight's training grounds. The Duke grants her wish, and she marvels at the soldier's skill. Then a voice rings out, Damian. Overjoyed, Ellie runs to him, leaving the Duke behind. But jealousy stirs again when Damian learns she already ate with the Duke. His dark gaze doesn't go unnoticed. Ellie promises they'll eat together soon, and the Duke smoothly suggests they all share meals from now on. That evening, the three gather at a grand table. Dish after dish is offered to Ellie, both men vying for her attention, turning dinner into a quiet competition of affection. The next day, Ellie vents to Vieira about how exhausting it is when Damian and the Duke clash like rivals. Vieira only smiles, assuring her it's just their clumsy way of showing love. She urges Ellie to give the little gift she made to the Duke, but Ellie hesitates. The sting of a past rejection comes to mind, but Vieira's warmth pushes her forward. Outside, the Duke readies for an inspection with Ante. He warns Ellie not to cause trouble while he's away, his gaze sharp at the mention of the Amantas. Luckily, before things grow tense, a knight calls him to depart. Ellie seizes the moment, shoving the gift into his hand. She braces for rejection, but the Duke snatches it and mutters a rough compliment. His words may sound teasing, yet he ties the knot onto his waist before riding off. That small gesture says more than he'll admit. Days later, Ellie beams over the sword Waybrock and Talum crafted, letting Damian test its weight with eager swings. When the craftsman arrives, she introduces Damian to them. Talum, though, studies him intently, as though sizing him up. Ellie invites them to the market, but they decline, eager to work on something new. Talum's curiosity about Damian lingers in her thoughts. Later, Ellie and Damian enjoy barbecued skewers, laughter filling the air, until Ellie stiffens. A chill runs down her spine. Someone is following them. She grabs Damian's hand, rushing towards Garrett, but before they reach safety, a shadow rips her away, separating her from Damian. In the depths of the forest, Duke Schweitz and his knights cut down waves of monsters with swift precision. The clash of steel against claws echoes in the night, yet amidst the chaos, Ante notices something unusual. The Duke, fierce as ever, carries a faint smile, his gaze often dropping to the knot tied at his waist. It's Ellie's gift, and even here, surrounded by danger, it's what keeps his mood strangely light. Ante questions him about it while fending off a beast, but before the Duke can respond, a knight snaps at them both to focus on surviving first. The Duke lets it go. For now. But inwardly, he's already thinking of the moment he'll see Ellie again. Back at the market, things take a darker turn. Just as Ellie is about to be dragged away, the maids rush in and shield her. A shell checks her carefully, concern flooding her face. Damian, breathless, pushes his way through and freezes when he sees the blood on Ellie's arm. The sight makes his chest tighten. The stranger who tried to take Ellie cries out desperately, claiming she is his missing child. The crowd gasps and whispers spread like wildfire. Ellie is too stunned to react, her mind whirling with confusion and fear. Then Aveli steps forward, all grace and poise, as though the timing was planned. Grace follows behind her, surprised to find Ellie here as well. Aveli introduces herself, calmly adding details about the stranger's claim. But her explanation isn't enough to sway Garrett, who remains cautious. Damian, however, is another story. His eyes narrow, sharp with suspicion, locking on Aveli as if he could see right through her words. Ellie notices this, and his unwavering stance steadies her shaken mind. Her arm throbs suddenly, pain shooting through. She asks Aveli for help, pleading for her divine healing. Yet Aveli refuses, offering holy water instead. She lifts the bottle as if it were salvation. But before a single drop touches Ellie's skin, Damian swipes it from her hands and shatters it to the ground. A sharp crack of glass silences the crowd. Damian's voice cuts the air as he questions the liquid inside, doubting if it could truly be holy water. The liquid's scent, the way Aveli hesitates? Something is undeniably wrong. I don't trust Aveli one bit. Aveli realizes her plan is slipping away, so she quickly shifts gears, acting sweet and innocent. But when her eyes meet Damian's sharp glare, she falters for a moment. His eyes look familiar. Then it hits her. They've met before. He was a test subject from the apothecary she bought potions from. Even so, she stays in character. No matter how suspicious Damian looks, she knows he can't prove she's lying. Grace rushes in, calling Damian out for being too harsh toward Aveli. After all, Aveli carries the status of a priestess of the Northern Temple, and openly doubting her would make Damian look reckless. Ellie steps between them, her calm presence easing the tension before it can spiral further. She doesn't want an argument to overshadow the real problem. But the man cuts in again, his voice desperate as he insists Ellie is his lost child. Before the situation can spiral, Ivana steps forward and shuts him down, demanding proof. And right on cue, Aveli speaks up once more. With a soft voice and just the right amount of false concern, she offers to help the man prove his claim by running a paternity test with holy water. The crowd stirs, but Garrett, Damian, and the maids exchange uneasy looks. None of them trust this suggestion. Ellie coaxes Ellie to take the test, this time invoking the Duke's name. The moment Ellie hears it, suspicion overtakes her. How did Ellie know she's affiliated with House Schweitz when she came bearing the Amanta name? And plus, Duke Schweitz and the temple are at odds with each other, so why would a priestess try to help her? Ellie keeps her composure and turns Ellie's ploy against her. Calmly, she asks for some of this so-called holy water, not for herself, but to heal the Duke instead. And that's the checkmate. It would look bad for a priestess to refuse to help the sick, after all. Back at the estate, the doctor carefully tends to Ellie's injury. The sting fades, but her mind doesn't rest. She keeps replaying the earlier events, determined to uncover the priestess's true purpose. One day, she'll also clear up Grace's misunderstanding, but that will have to wait. Ivana and Michelle step forward, guilt heavy in their eyes, apologizing for not protecting her better. Ellie quickly waves them off, swinging her arm back and forth with a playful grin to prove she's fine. Classic Ellie, downplaying her pain so others don't worry. She'd rather laugh it off than add to their burden. Still, seeing Roina and the others fret over her safety makes Ellie emotional. A nagging thought slips in. What will happen to her once the real plot of this story begins to unfold? But she pushes it away before it can linger. Instead, she shares what happened at the market with Roina. The details shock her, and without hesitation, Roina insists the Duke must hear about this immediately. She plans to bring it up as soon as possible. The doctor and maids encourage Ellie to rest, and they quietly step out of the room shortly. Silence falls, leaving only Damian nearby. He hesitates before speaking, his voice low, apologizing for not being able to protect her better. But Ellie brushes off his guilt, reminding him it wasn't his fault. Wanting to give him something to do, and maybe a little space for herself, she asks Damian to fetch her some cocoa. Once he leaves, Ellie wastes no time. She darts to her desk and begins sketching out ideas, laying the groundwork for a trap that will expose Ellie. When Damian returns with her cocoa, Ellie thanks him warmly and takes a sip. The sweetness spreads across her tongue, easing the tension in her chest. For a brief moment, it feels almost normal. Just two kids, cocoa, and quiet. But the sweet moments never last long. Days later, Ellie arrives at the gates of the Schweitz estate. Ellie sets her plan into motion. Disguised, she makes a call to the temple, reporting a supposed thief stealing holy water and even giving them a location. There's noise and commotion on the other end. Clearly, she struck a nerve. The call ends smoothly, exactly how she wanted. Now it's time for the real showdown with Ellie. Outside the estate, Ellie and the man rehearse their scheme, preparing to put on another convincing act. Soon, Roina, Ellie, and Damian greet them as they step through the gates of the Schweitz estate. Ellie glances around, noting the Duke's absence. All that effort to steal real holy water just for the Duke not to be around? Ellie seethes in quiet fury. As they settle in the living room, Roina quietly studies Ellie. There's something unsettling about how comfortably she carries herself, almost as though she feels like she's the lady of the house. Before long, Ellie makes her move, requesting a blood sample from both Ellie and the man to prove their supposed connection. Ellie, slipping into her role, feigns nervousness and asks for a hug first. Ellie agrees without hesitation, and Ellie embraces her tightly, almost too warmly. Then the test begins. Ellie carefully demonstrates how the process will work. When it's Ellie's turn, she steps forward, playing along. But just as the priestess draws her blood, Ellie jolts, sending the vial of holy water crashing to the floor. The liquid splashes onto the ground, and Ellie's composure shatters. She snaps, screaming at Ellie, her true colors breaking through for everyone to see. Realizing her mistake, Ellie quickly tries to backpedal, excusing her outburst. She tries to postpone the test, but Ellie doesn't give her the chance. Calmly, she reminds Ellie of her earlier promise, to bring holy water for the Duke's healing. Alas, Ellie tells her she wasn't able to ask for more than one vial, but Ellie calls out her bluff. She knows Ellie brought two. After all, she felt another vial when they hugged. At that, Ellie stiffens, the blood draining from her face. With a cunning smile, Ellie leans in close, whispering sharp words meant only for Ellie's ears. Ellie didn't catch Ellie in her trap, rather, it's the other way around. With all the mounting clues and increasingly dubious and inconsistent actions of the priestess, along with Damian's words against her true intentions, Ellie's suspicions finally begin to fall into place. The priestess is nothing but a complete fraud. Just as this realization settles in, a servant announces the arrival of yet another priest, and instantly panic overtakes Ellie. Desperation bubbles up within her, a dark magic-fueled outburst. She lashes out at Ellie, determined to end her right then and there for spoiling her plans, and Damian too, who gets caught in the crossfire. The chaos escalates, but shockingly, it's the Duke himself who's wounded. Father of the Year? He definitely deserves some credit. Stunned by what she's done, Ellie finds herself overpowered and gets pinned down by Ante, while flailing and demanding why they're doing this to her. Girl, obviously because you're evil. The Duke then confronts the man who claims to be Ellie's father. He questions what kind of father does not protect their child. As this tense face-off unfolds, a much bigger question lingers in the air. Does Ellie want to return to her so-called father, who appeared quite questionably, or does she want to stay in her current life alongside Damian and the others? The Duke assures her that she is free to choose. With doubt swirling in her mind, Damian's comforting presence gently soothes her heart, setting the stage for the big decision ahead. Amused that Damian takes the words right from his mouth, Schweitz did the most adult and mature thing to do. He splashes the stranger with holy water. The effect is immediate and dramatic. The blonde-haired stranger's pristine locks darken, transforming into brunette tresses, and the striking green eyes fade into something far less memorable. The secret is glaringly clear for all to see. There is no holy sanctity here, only deception. The secrets are out when the Duke literally flushes it all out. With her woven facade crumbling from the truth being laid out, panic overtakes the fake priestess, and desperation is the only thing she can cling to as it fuels every word she attempts to say or deny the accusations. But her grip loosens when her real identity is revealed by the Duke when he calls out her family name, Fangirl. The guards waste no time in escorting her away. With the chaos settled, Ellie finds solace in Damian's words of comfort. She even gets bombarded with the Duke's worries and concerns, making her feel more relaxed. Even though Ellie is incredibly resilient, it can be overwhelming for her body, and suddenly, consciousness slips away from her grasp. Fortunately, the Duke is able to catch her. In her bedroom while she is resting, Schweitz ends up taking notes of another detail he failed to observe in Ellie. She's been enduring the pain she held for far too long. He feels outraged, which ignites the anger he has for the temple priests in the dungeon. He beats up one of them to a pulp, while the rest cower in fear as they make up excuses and beg for mercy. They swear to do anything and everything that he requests. Unfortunately for them, the Duke can be quite greedy. He wants them to agree to his request for adoption and marriage forms. The priests are hesitant, especially since it's a marriage among nobles without the approval of the royal family. But fear is a great motivation. To seal the deal, he makes use of magic to bind them into a contract. Meanwhile, in the realm of dreams, Ellie wanders a moonlit meadow beneath a shimmering sky. Suddenly, a large white furry beast darts past her, its eyes locked onto hers. Is this a dream or reality weaving its mysterious thread? Then, an intense golden surge of energy envelops her, hinting at something magical stirring within. Waking up from her slumber, Ellie recalls what happened prior to her passing out, and wonders what that unusual dream was all about. Damian hugs her upon noticing her awake and adorably expresses his worries about her like a cute puppy. Promising herself to be more cautious in the near future, the Duke enters to check her condition. Aw, these two boys really do care about her. The Duke then shifts the topic to Ellie's identity. He asks her if she's asking for an extra bottle of holy water is her plan all along. Ellie realizes that the Duke knows everything. She has asked for the holy water not just to catch the fake priestess, but also to cure the Duke from his hysteria. She fears that she may have been too reckless for his liking, but he reassures her that it is fine and she deserves to act like a kid. He even decisively asks her if she wants to be part of the family. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the palace, the king, Ventus, sits on the throne, doing his usual daily routine as the ruler. However, his mind is all over the place, particularly in the early years of his prime when war was rampant. The mere thought of a sword, bloodshedding, and whatever the things they do at war spikes up his hatred for peace after 15 years. He is particularly discontented that after all that, he was still unable to get the thing he wanted the most. His attention is then shifted to another issue at hand. Count Recall Fangirl, the father of Ellie. Upon discovering that Count Fangirl did something out of this world, the king is outraged as the Count begs for forgiveness. The king's mind races, desperate to find a way to save the Count from a guilty verdict. Otherwise, the temple and Schweitz would think he was behind this. Just then, Queen Cartia steps in, offering a solution to this royal mess. proposing they tackle the problem as a couple. Her polished, almost too perfect demeanor sets off alarm bells. She definitely smells like trouble lurking beneath the surface. Cartia suggests that since Damian is a son of Collider, they could help him inherit his family's assets through marriage. Naturally, the king jumps at the chance to pick Damian's future wife himself, driven by his usual greed. While the king showers Cartia with praise for her brilliant plan, which honestly feels more self-serving than smart, he's completely blind to the hidden agenda she keeps locked away beneath her lacy gloves. Meanwhile, Ellie wakes to an unusually quiet household. With only her maids about, everyone else seems distracted. Taking advantage of the calm, she decides to venture into the underground dungeon alone. Definitely not your average morning activity. Despite magical seals guarding the doors, Ellie breezes right in and tracks down Ellie, or rather, Livia Fangirl, the true villain behind all this chaos. Ellie wastes no time with pleasantries, grilling Livia relentlessly about Damian's situation. Livia's cold response reveals her sole ambition, to be with the Duke. Just as things heat up, Livia suddenly collapses, uttering a mysterious riddle about her green eyes before losing consciousness. This unexpected twist leaves more questions hanging in the air than answers. After that fateful, puzzling morning, Ellie spends the rest of her afternoon being carried around by the Duke, who strictly wishes that she eat more. He doesn't want her to lose her dumpling cheeks. Yet her mind is also elsewhere. Her background as the daughter of a famous thief will one day be revealed to the whole empire. This certainly means she needs to move fast. If only Schweitz stops poking fun at her cheeks, that is. Fortunately, her eye spotted the Baron and Garrett from across them. However, their arrival is not a happy occasion as they intend to apologize to her for the previous events, specifically when they first saw Livia at the market. Poor Garrett, he didn't do anything wrong. Ellie is ready to forgive them, however, Schweitz advises her that she should not be so merciful to others as easily as a member of the ducal family. Her role as the future daughter-in-law hangs in the balance with her actions and words. When Ellie agrees with his words, the Duke suddenly suggests they hang the father-son duo outside, shocking the little girl. My gosh, calm down, Schweitz! Using her best puppy dog eyes, Ellie pleads to the Duke not to harm them or else she will skip lunch. Much to his chagrin, he lets them go. However, again, her mind wanders to the servants with lingering regrets. They must have been punished as well, since her safety was compromised. Good thing Schweitz decided to let the servants go when he sees how upset she is. When Damian arrives, the Duke announces that he has more things to discuss. Ellie's adoption papers will be signed by the Baron, making her a temporary member of the Amantha family. The father-son duo is quick to welcome her warmly. However, the Duke then aggressively reminds them that this arrangement is only until the marriage, which means that Ellie would soon change her surname to Schweitz. Don't worry, Duke. No one's gonna take your daughter-in-law away. The two children, however, prance around in happiness upon realizing they'll be a real family. And so Ellie enters the Baron's mansion as an official adopted daughter. Damian accompanies her to be officially introduced as her future husband. The adults explain to her the upcoming wedding and the people officiating. Ellie then remembers that their carriage was dirtied on the way to the mansion. Garrett then tells her that it's all squeaky clean now since they used a tree bark. A tree bark for cleaning? That's new. How does a bark clean stuff? The piece of bark Garrett holds is part of the Rugal tree, a tree that roots from the eastern side of the country. Its special ability comes from the inner white part of the bark that can absorb any water it touches. Oh, it does come in handy. To add to that, Garrett explains to them that the tree was the late Duke Collider's gift to Duke Schweitz, so it is best to keep how to make use of a tree a secret since the Duke is quite sentimental about it. Requesting a good amount of those barks, Ellie and Damian turn up inside the carriage, bidding their farewells, with her cheekily calling the Baron her grandfather. The poor guy is offended. Back in her room, Ellie soon finds herself facing the solemn looks of her personal servants who had just come back from their punishment. The maids express how thankful they are to her and apologize for failing to protect her. Ellie can't help but cut them off as she feels like she doesn't deserve whatever kindness and safety they have provided for her due to her background as a thief's daughter. But they don't care. They know from the very start and decidedly still want to be faithfully loyal to their duties to her because she is their precious child. Aw, she really did find a perfect family in them. After some time, the box of tree bark arrives at the garden, with Ellie using every single brain cell to think of a way to profit from it. She still needs to be financially independent. But playtime is a must, as Damian is showing her the hand-woven flower wreath he's made for her, when an unexpected visitor comes in without prior notice. Her name is Wintia, and she invites herself to their playtime. Okay, seriously, who names their kid Wintia? The new girl introduces herself as the daughter of Count Salome, the relative of the late Duke Clyder. Even though Wintia asks so nicely to play with them, Damian clings harder to Ellie as if he's saying he's uncomfortable. But they can't always decline people who are invested in him. They need to show courtesy. So with her best smile, Ellie convinces Damian that they should play with the guest. However, Wintia totally ignores Ellie by pretending to be so close to Damian. Okay, it's official. She's a new pet peeve. Upon realizing that Wintia considers her a servant, Ellie reintroduces herself as the daughter of Baron Amanta, flustering the child. Ha! The three wandered around the garden, the two accompanying Wintia to ponder over her choices of flowers for her wreath. The brunette sees a bush of roses and rushes towards it despite Ellie's warning to pick another type of flower, as that one has thorns. And then she trips. She then proceeds to wail about how painful her injury is. Since she's in a whole lot of pain, the two decide to take her to the doctor for consultation, but Wintia says she can't walk at all. The only plausible solution? Damian has to support her body. As they were about to leave, someone came into the garden calling out for Wintia. Unexpected guest number 2 is actually Wintia's nanny, who soon grows frantic over seeing her in a mess. She instantly becomes wary of the two and even threatens to tell the Duke about them not taking responsibility for Wintia. Woman, they're the children of the Duke, and you both come in like you own the place. The audacity of that servant! Coincidentally, the Duke overhears what she said as he arrives with his usual cold front. Realizing how shallow she sounds, especially inside the Duke's territory, the nanny kneels and asks for his forgiveness. But Schwades cuts through the act, telling her she's asking for mercy from the wrong person. Desperate, she then pleads for forgiveness from the children. Ugh, please don't forgive her! Just then, Count Salome appears with the rest of the guests. He quickly nags at the nanny and Wintia for their rudeness and questions their sudden need to venture into other people's gardens when they already have their own. But surprisingly, the majority of the guests swooned over Wintia's kind heart. She only ventured out to find roses to give to her father. Girl, plant your own roses. This kid really knows how to get on my nerves. Wintia even makes a dramatic display, almost shifting the blame to Ellie and Damian, painting them as culprits. Fortunately for Ellie, she has a heart of gold and a pretty sharp mind. She cleverly diverts the tension away from herself and Damian by taking the blame for not picking the flowers. She points out that Wintia saw her more as a play servant than the daughter of a baron, and slyly mentions Wintia's magical abilities. This truly makes a big impact on the crowd, since it now seems like a big misunderstanding between the children, especially poor Wintia. However, the little Miss Brunette looks flustered and trembling. Excusing themselves, the nanny and Wintia quickly flee the scene. Later, Count Salome scolds Wintia for her flimsy excuse and even hits the nanny. OMG, he's worse than them! Despite his daughter's poorly judged acting and behavior, he fuels her false hope, showing understanding of how embarrassing it is to bow down to someone lower than them, let alone an orphan like Ellie. They decide they must put Ellie in her place and want Wintia to get together with Damian to impress the king and elevate their family standing. Like father, like daughter, they're the worst of the worst! The following day, Ellie is dressed up to go out. Meanwhile, Wintia arrives at the ducal house, uninvited perhaps, along with Count Salome, who has some tricks up his sleeve. He even brings along the grand tutor of the Clyder family. Inside the premises stands Damian, along with a few servants with him, and the nuisance, little Miss Salome, attempts to greet him with her perky smile. But to no avail, she gets ignored. Most likely because Damian does not care. In hopes of grabbing his attention, she holds his hand. When he turns her way, he doesn't even remember her name. He coldly gives her the cold shoulder, effectively letting go of her grip. Hilarious! In contrast to his distant front towards her, he expresses a different personality, a happy one at that, upon receiving a letter from Ellie. He then leaves, determined and motivated to work and study harder. This angered Wintia. Serves you right. Elsewhere, near the Red Lake, is Ellie, who had just gone to the blacksmith, and Talim is thinking about how to earn for her future. She then suddenly feels like someone is following her. Out of nowhere, a rock falls from above, ultimately injuring her ankle. The culprit? Well, none other than Wintia. She couldn't catch Damian's attention, so she absolutely blames Ellie for ruining everything. With the use of her magic, she keeps throwing rocks and then ends up using a strong surge of her powers to splash the red water on her to make it seem like Ellie pushed her down. However, she failed to see through her plans as Ellie told her that the Red Sea can instill pain, especially if it gets in her eye. Realizing the truth, Wintia screams in pain and still throws accusations at Ellie. Not only that, she even resorted to calling her a lowly orphan. Nuh-uh, no one insults our girl. Ellie, not reacting so much, calls upon Thalum and the rest of the crows tauntingly. The appearance of the birds effectively scares her out of her wits, so Wintia passes out. At the grand hall of the ducal house, the Count, the Grand Executive, and the rest of the members are all waiting for the meeting to commence, with Count Salome being wary of the situation. Duke Schweitz arrives along with Damian for a second opinion, since it is his life they're going to have to discuss. With everyone present in the room, the meeting begins with the Count declaring that they need Damian back in order to have the alliance between the Kleider family and the Collateral family by wedding Damian and Wintia. Schweitz scoffs at it, thinking it's ridiculous. Why is there a need to do all this planning when they do not actually care about the child? It is all a ploy. But Salome is as stubborn as a hard trunk. He threatens to forcefully take away the child. Before things could escalate into a whole argument, Loina rushes inside, announcing that the two young ladies are injured. Schweitz and Damian quickly flee the scene, check on Ellie, but what was meant to be a touching moment for the trio just has to be disrupted when the Salome father and daughter duo make a dramatic scene. They're trying to blame Ellie for what happened with Wintia, claiming that Ellie pushed her into the water. Fortunately, the Duke does not let anyone say bad things to his child. Ellie's heart melted at the mention of being considered the Duke's child, but moments have to be ruined when there are people like the Salomes. Wintia cries out that Ellie rejected her attempts at friendship by pushing her into the Red Lake, causing a commotion amongst the crowd. The Count defends his daughter, fussing about how horrendous Ellie is and even asking for responsibility. Up until Damian pours him a cup of water. That's my boy! The little guy explains the logic between being pushed into the lake and being splashed with water. The kind of logic that makes everyone question whether what Wintia says is true or not, no matter how much Count Salome refutes his words. In the end, Wintia ends up being pressured from being caught in the act and sheds tears, confessing that it is her father who told her that Damian is hers and that Ellie is someone they need to get rid of. With that revelation, the fearsome aura of the Duke unleashes. After that difficult situation, the Duke and young Damian are finally left alone with Ellie, while they fret over her getting injured once again. Damian is frustrated that she has once again broken her promise of keeping herself safe. Ellie feels guilty and intends to make a promise again, but Schweitz didn't mind, as this might happen again in the near future. All he desires is for them to act and be like children, and he will do the adult things in order to protect them and their well-being. Ellie wonders if this is what it feels like to have a dad. Ellie then tells Damian that she will always shield him from anyone who wants to hurt him. Right then and there, she asks him if they should just get married. So guys, what do you think of this story so far? Please subscribe and turn on notifications for updates on this and all our other stories, so you can be the first to find out when they're out. Thank you so much for your support. See you in the next one!